heb ik een ongewone gast. Hij staat nu al in de handboeken geologie als een van de grondleggers van de moderne theorie van de platentectoniek. Na zijn ontdekking volgde een avontuurlijk bestaan met gewaagde oceanografische expedities. Maar plots hield hij ermee op en ging werken bij moeder Teresa in Calcutta. Pas na de ontmoeting met de Franse priester Thomas Philippe vond hij zijn wetenschappelijke roeping terug en ging wonen in een arkgemeenschap in Frankrijk. Wij ontmoeten vandaag professor Xavier le Pichon in de arkgemeenschap Le Grain in Brussel. Xavier le Pichon, we are very glad to have you in L'Arche in Brussels. You were born in French Indochina, modern-day Vietnam. Tell me, how did your parents get there?
My father went to Vietnam in 1928, I think, something like that, and he stayed there until the war.
And what did he
all
do?
the children were born there. He started working in rubber plants. You know, these hevea, the trees where at the time you made rubber with that. And he was fairly successful, but there was a big crack of 1930. And he was wiped out. And then he entered into the administration of Vietnam, and he began a long friendship with the Vietnamese people. To me, still now, my country is Vietnam.
Is it?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
where I really feel at home. Yeah.
Yes. I'm a bit surprised that you say that you've got these very good memories about Vietnam because you lived the war in Vietnam.
Yes, the war was okay because nothing much happened until the Japanese decided that they had to seize Indochina and put us in concentration camps. So there was 1 year which was extremely difficult.
How old were you?
I was eight at the time.
When you were put in a concentration camp?
The whole family, all the Frenchmen were put in the concentration camp. And the main thing was that we had nothing to eat. So all the small children died. But otherwise, for me it was fun. You know, we were on the seashore. We were playing a lot.
It was not an enclosed camp?
It was an enclosed camp on the seashore, but then at the end it became bad because when the Japanese left, they armed the Vietnamese who started their revolt, and then this became dangerous. Quite a few people were killed. But, you know, being a child, I enjoyed it throughout. And the real traumatism for me was to get back to France. I had never been to France. And when I arrived in France, I was so shocked.
Why?
I thought it was so ugly. And it was cold, it was miserable. Going to school, you know, freezing. Oh,
But you had just been liberated from a concentration camp.
But that was Vietnam. And I discovered Normandy and Cherbourg, where I was living. Well,
in the States, you met the famous oceanographer Maurice Ewing, and he suggested that you should tour the world on a ship rather than continue at university.
That was very interesting. I arrived and I told him I want to learn about oceanography, and I had a Fulbright fellowship for 1 year. And he told me, if you want to learn about oceanography, then go on the ship. I have a ship starting tomorrow for a world circling tour. I need somebody, so go on that. So I started this fascinating tour around the world. It was a very, very difficult conditions, very harsh life. That was this ship, yeah. That's how I was connected with the sea. That's how I really discovered that I love the Earth, and I love on the Earth the sea, you know, and I was so happy being all the time in the middle of this immense ocean, you know, going from all the way to Antarctica, the Indian Ocean, and so on. That was a fantastic thing.
Why? What do you experience in the middle of the ocean?
I think you realize that the Earth is a living planet, and that to share with her, you have to begin to learn her. You know, it's a little bit like a woman. If you want to, for me, a man, you know, having a good relationship with a woman, I need to discover her progressively and have respect for her. And that's the same for the Earth. I think most of the discovery I made about the Earth were because I love the Earth. And it's not so much secret that I extracted, it's really secret that she gave me in confidence when she felt I was okay, you know. She could tell me things that she would not tell to others.
That's nice. You describe it as a lover and a loved one, a play between two lovers.
You know, when I work on a subject, I had times where months and months, or years and years, I could not find a solution to a problem. I would keep it in my head. It would come at night and so on. And I think about the Earth as living. You know, I can see the Earth. I can see what's happening inside. You know, and so on. So it's a very important relationship. You know, I discovered a lot about the fact that we are part of this planet. We are part of the universe.
In the 20s, the idea that continents could move was already formulated by the German Alfred Wegener, I think. Right. But then what you discovered, plate tectonics.
It's something different. I mean, the basic idea of Wegener was correct. The continents have moved. His mechanism was all wrong because he thought the continents move separately and were kind of plowing through the floor of the ocean. Instead of that, it's the floor of the ocean who moves around, you know, and because it moves around, it carries passively the continents. So it's a very different story. And the important thing is that we were able to measure the motion, measure the edge of the floor, and find out at what speed the oceans were opening and what velocity the continents were moving. And I work a lot on that, but the contribution I am most known for was because I made the first model on which I computed the velocities of the plates all over the world, you know. And so I was the first, for example, to say the shortening is 5 centimeters per year in the Himalayas, it's 1 centimeter per year in the Alps, and that's what produces the mountain belts. And I was able to say that, for example, Hawaii was getting closer to Tokyo every year by 8 centimeters. And 15 years later, it was measured by satellite, by GPS.
How did you get to that?
Well, that was an exciting time. You know, in this laboratory I was working, we were teamwork. So I proposed to the others to work with me on this new plate model, and they said that was too far away. So I worked alone, and during 3 months, you know, I was working all the night at the computer. I would come back at 6 in the morning for the breakfast with my wife, and one morning I told her, look, I will be the most famous man on the earth. I have discovered how the earth works. So I was so excited, you know. And I published my work, and it immediately got world recognition. Yeah, that's
This book.
Plate tectonics.
So thanks to your model, we better understand earthquakes,
Sure.
the occurrence of earthquakes.
For example, the recent Japanese earthquake, is based on the accumulation of energy to the Pacific plate coming below Japan here. And I had predicted correctly the velocity. Of course, now we've made great progress, with the GPS and so on. We have learned a lot since then, but the basic model was correct. And that was, we were entering in a new relationship with the Earth, because now we could predict. We could say the Earth is going to do that. In the Himalayas, it's going to do that. In Japan, it's going to do that. In the Alps, you see. Because we could predict how the deformation was accumulated and so on. And this is the great problem of our time. The new world we have been building with this huge metropolis and so on, we have not had enough time that we learn what the difficulties of the Earth will produce with them. For example, half of the very large towns are within an earthquake belt, and one day will be affected. And we don't know how they will be affected. We'll have to learn and to live with that. So we have to learn to live with the fact that the Earth is a living planet. And you cannot do just what you want. You have to adapt to it.
It's quite extraordinary, because when you were at the top, you were offered scholarships, you were very well known, widely known, and then you suddenly quit.
Yeah, I had a big crisis. I had a real crisis. I was 35 or so. And I was offered everything at the time. And then suddenly I realized that I was working so hard, 7 days a week and 14 hours a day. And I realized that I was not looking at man and woman anymore, especially those who were in difficulty. It was so intense. The work was so hard that I was losing touch with the people. And that was a terrible discovery for me. And at the time, I decided to quit science. Yeah, I decided to quit science. I went to see Mother Teresa's and spent 1 month with their people, the brothers actually. I could not be with the sisters. So I was with the brothers, working in the streets and so on. And that was a decision I made then, that I would try never to turn back my eyes from somebody that I discover who is in suffering. That was a very hard decision, and I certainly did not respect it, but it was a turning point in my life. And then it was big discussion.
What happened in Calcutta?
Well, I had already in this crisis, but then I spent time there, and I was working in the house for the dead. They call it for the dying people. That was in the former temple of Kaligat, a very extraordinary place. Has been filmed quite often, but you had to be there to see the impression. All these people, wailing on their small beds and dying, actually. And I was in charge of giving food to a small child who was dying of hunger. I mean, he was at the last stage of emaciation. And suddenly, this person in front of you enters your life. You don't know why, but you know that suddenly he is a person who enters in you. And at this time, I was so touched that I promised to him, he could not understand what I was saying, but I promised, look, from now on, I will always remember this time and try to change my life, to take into account those that nobody takes into account. Very difficult thing to say, but still it has reoriented my life. You know. I had taken the decision to quit science, but then the co-founder of L'Arche community, this Father Thomas Philippe told me, no, it's good to come at L'Arche with us, but keep your science. And that was not easy either, because I had actually already resigned from many positions. So for the people in science, I was considered a quitter, you know, a guy a little bit like that. And I had to start again and apply for new positions and reclimb the ladder.
Really?
That was difficult. Yes. That was very difficult, especially when you know the people are making comments in your back and so on. But it worked, you know. So I had this new life with my family, being with the community in the middle of the people with the handicap, and at the same time working in the most prestigious research institution in France. So that was a new life that was not easy, but very interesting.
You combine that?
I've been asked this question quite often. I think the answer is prayer. You know, it's true that when you are with people for which intellectual capacity cannot be talked about, and during the evening, the night, the weekend, and then during the day you are with people in which the search for excellence in intellectual capacities is first and foremost, and it's a big fight. There is a contradiction, very strong schizophrenia in a sense. But I found that prayer could put that together.
How?
If you spend enough time in prayer, I think it pacifies the thing, and it gives you the possibility to be present to the people, whoever they are, whether they are people with a handicap or scientists with whom you discussed some important subject, and take them as a gift.
You wrote an essay, Ex Homo, and you look at fragility as the essence of human nature. Yeah. But a lot of people would say, oh no, it's not the essence, it's a default.
Let me tell you a story that has fascinated me. You know, in the 80s, a man discovered in Zagros, you know, the mountains in north of Iraq, a cave in which he found tombs, 6 tombs of Neanderthal people, about 100,000 years ago. They were not even sapiens. We are Homo sapiens. You are Homo sapiens. But they were Neanderthalian. Supposed to be very primitive, you know. Yes. And they found in one of the tombs a skeleton of a 40-year-old man that was so deformed, you know, no more right arm, the right leg was completely shot and he could not use. Half of his face had been crushed and he could not see. And yet he had lived for years and years because everything was healed. You know, and at this time, all the specialists agreed that he could not live by himself. He could not gather his food, he could not hunt, he could not even feed himself, he could not walk without help. So at the time, the people were living in small groups, 15, 20, and moving every day a few kilometers. You know? Why did they decide that they would take care of this guy, you know? They had to carry him on their back. They had to feed him. They had to reorganize the whole community to take care of him. You know, that was 100,000 years ago. That was not even Homo sapiens. And this is something that you never find in animal communities. It's something which is specific of man. Why does man decide suddenly that he reorganized the community to put in its center people that cannot take care of themselves, but that are so important for them that they decide to completely change their life for them? Now, this is, to me, the essence of humanity. You know, you are humans when you begin to behave in a humane way. And behave in a human way is taking care of these people. So that, to me, the major factor of evolution of the human societies has been this remarkable new way of looking at those who are sick, who have a handicap, who are at the last time of their life, and decide, I cannot leave them. You know, I cannot just throw them on the side and continue my road. I have to take care of them. That is the big decision that has been taken by man time after time since more than 100,000 years. And this is what has built the human culture. And you can decide about the quality of the humanity of a culture by just looking at what do they do with this type of people. Could happen if systematically, you would say, the people who are too old, who have too much of a handicap, who are too sick, we push them away. They are out of our society. You would have a society which becomes extremely hard, you know. By simply doing that, you become hard. Because you have to build up a wall around your heart, you know, and decide, I'm not going to. I've seen that times and times often. The decision, for example, in nowadays, the decision about what do we do with our old father, mother, uncle, who has developed very advanced Alzheimer's disease, you know, and with dementia. You know, what do we do? Do we continue to see him? Do we devote time to him? Is it important to us? I had to live through that. My mother died of Alzheimer's disease, and my father decided to spend the last year with her. You know, and by spending time with them, by finding out that they are important people, in the measure in which we give them importance in our life, and then in return, they change our heart, you know, and they make our society more humane. So the problem is not whether there should be euthanasia or so on. These are very difficult subjects. The problem is, in general, with respect to these people, are we ready to really invest ourselves to be more human, or are we going to push them aside? You know, and my experience, if you push them aside, if, for example, you decide, I don't go to see my mother anymore at this house for old people because it sickens me to see her in this state. I mean, that's a very difficult, bad decision, it seems to me, because, you know, you, in a sense, you mutilate yourself. You know?
Why? Maybe you protect yourself from
But
seeing your old mother suffering.
Yeah, but your mother, and does not your mother has to tell you something, you know? It's so remarkable that when my mother died, and she was really at the stage of dementia at the end, my father said, I only now realize what was the mystery of our marriage. And I never loved her so much as in the last years of her life. And the more I think about it nowadays, that's a very important thing for us. I say, if we are in the image of God, in a sense, God is on our image, you know. And then we are weak, we can suffer. I think God is weak, God can suffer. I think this is why we can share with Him. Because when you begin to love somebody, then you like his freedom, and then you become weak, and you suffer with him. Because, you know, he's taking a path that is not necessarily the one you want him to take, and he has his weakness, and you share in this weakness, and you are weak with him. Parents find that all the time. And God is like that. God is tender, God is loving, God is weak, God suffers. God is in a companionship with us. That's the way I see him anyway.